What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Huge night on AEW this past week. We found out three huge things. We found out Hangman Page's answer to whether he wants to be in the Dark Order or not. We get the first match for Revolution being revealed. And we also find out who is the official tag team for the Inner Circle. Without further ado, I'm Kevin Jones, Disciples of Wrestling, and let's get down to it. So we start off the show with the Dark Order celebrating -1, aka Brody Jr.'s birthday. As they're celebrating the birthday, Luther comes out and talks about how much he doesn't like and doesn't appreciate how -1, aka Brody Lee, said that he looked stupid on AEW Dark. And this turns into a brawl where TH2 ends up coming out, and we end up seeing these two sides end up fighting, which brings out Adam Page. And Hangman, he just does this crazy dive from off the stage, and we go straight into the match. So we start off the match with TH2 and Luther and Serpentico versus Dark Order and Hangman Adam Page, where we saw an insanely fast-paced, high-octane, high-innovative, offensive display for both teams. I'm sorry, I got just overwhelmed with words there. Because this match was just amazing. Amazingly fast-paced, amazing moves, hits on both sides, where we saw Hangman Adam Page take a lot of the control, but we also saw John Silver and Ryan Reynolds do their thing as a phenomenal tag team and a very underrated tag team in the tag division. And we saw Jack Evans do his thing in my job during his eye-obtain offense. And it was just an insanely great match where we saw the end of the final sequence being just one of the best tag team sequences I've ever seen, where literally all four members of this tag team of the Dark Order and Hangman Adam Page got a great amount of offense for the win for the Dark Order and Hangman Adam Page. And then we see John Silver just be all gushy, complimenting at Hangman, and then getting on his knee and asking if he's going to be joining the Dark Order, yay or nay, where we see Hangman Adam Page respectfully decline, saying that he has a bad history in groups and how he just needs to ride this solo. But we see how much this devastates the Dark Order as they actually set up a celebration that they had to call off literally in the moment. And we see Hangman just look sad, and as he walks to the back, and the Dark Order being confused, and him just grabbing a bottle of alcohol out of Stu Grayson's hand and just walking towards the back. Next up, we have Sting congratulating Darby Allin for his TNT Championship win to retain against Brian Cage last week, where we see Tony Schiavone introduce both Sting and Darby Allin, bringing them to the ring. And Sting just cuts to the chase. He congratulates him for the win of retaining against Brian Cage, and also talks about how he really does like and feel drawn to Darby Allin because Darby reminds him so much of how he used to be back in WCW. While Sting's in the middle of talking, of course, we see Taz on the Titantron, and the rest of the members of Team Taz is just infuriated and talks about how much he doesn't like how literally Sting gets involved in every Taz and Darby Allin encounterment. And they talk about how they've been gentlemen throughout this entire thing. And we see the guys actually want to take it to the street, as they say. And they challenge Darby Allin and Sting to a street fight, to where Darby Allin and Sting just, they quite frankly accepted quite fast, where Darby Allin said, just be careful what you wish for. Essentially, we're going to be getting a street fight between Darby Allin and Sting versus Ricky Starks and Brian Cage, and this is officially confirmed as the first match of Revolution. Next up, we see Alex Marvez. Just so happens to be at Kenny Omega's house, where we see the meeting of the Elite, where the Young Bucks pull up and they're going into Kenny Omega's house to not see Kenny Omega at all. It's actually just Don Callis there. So Don tries to essentially, first he tries to joke around with the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks ain't having it. They remember what Don Callis pulled last week, when he was supposed to introduce the Young Bucks, but instead introduced the Good Brothers as Kenny Omega's tag team partners and called them the Elite. And then he essentially thanks them for the investment of 12 years of being their best friends. Yeah, he did that. And then Don Callis calls himself family to Kenny and calls the Young Bucks old friends. He did that too. And then he tries to cut a check to buy the Young Bucks in their investment now of 12 years of a friendship. He tries to pay them for their friendship and told him essentially that the Young Bucks are holding back Kenny Omega and they're looking to drop the dead weight and start fresh for Omega. And the Young Bucks ain't having it. Long story short, Young Bucks beat him up. And we see that later on in the show that he has a black eye as Kenny Omega comes into the Daily's place, and Kenny Omega looks shocked and he's not happy either, as Don Callis essentially looks overwhelmed and accidentally says that the Young Bucks did it. Yeah, he did that. So we see Don Callis and Kenny Omega rush off Alex Marvez as he looked to get the scoop on everything that's going on, and they pretty much went shoe on also the cameraman that was there as well. So we really don't know what Don Callis talked about. Next up, we see Cody Rhodes versus Pretty Peter Avalon, and we saw a prediction from Cody, as Jim Ross talked about, where Cody said he can finish this match in under a minute, and it looked like he was going to stick to that word as he hits the crossroads literally as soon as the bell rings. It's looking like Cody's about to go for the pin, and then who comes out? Jade Cargill. As she's distracting Cody, we see Pretty Peter Avalon go for a low blow, and now Pretty Pete, he back in the match. And he starts to take control as he goes after Cody Rhodes' left knee and really works that for majority of the match. What ends up swinging the tide back to Cody Rhodes was when Cody hits the Cody Cutter, and we see Cody end up hitting a very anticlimactic finish where he goes for the figure four leg lock, and as he goes to punch Pretty Pete gets protective of his face and ends up tapping out. So like I said, a very anticlimactic win. Next up, we got the in-ring return of our boy, Jon Moxley. That was my best Justin Roberts impression. I'm sorry for the painfulness that you had to experience just then. But he's going up against this developmental guy from AEW Dark, Nick Mandan. Ooh, his name is... I still don't know it. But we end up seeing a nice display of power and agility from this powerhouse of a man. And he actually took more control of Jon Moxley throughout this. Jon actually looked like the underdog. But when it ends up getting Jon back into the match was a nice rebound German suplex where he used Nick's momentum to end up using this. And as it looks like Nick's about to take back over in this match, we see Jon Moxley put in a body scissors and really lock in the Bulldog choke, as it took less than 30 seconds for this guy to fall out and to end up bringing the win for Jon Moxley. At the end of the match, we see Jon cut a promo, as he's just a phenomenal promo as is. He talks about how it doesn't matter, Kenny, who you bring. You can bring the Elite, you can bring the Bullet Club, you can bring people from Impact. It don't matter. At the end of the day, everything in pro wrestling has to go through me. And with the year he had last year, I ain't mad at it. He ain't wrong. Jon is number one, Kenny's number two. But in this case, as it's looking for this year, it's looking like Kenny's number one and Jon's number two. Next up, we see Top Flight and Matt Sydal versus Matt Hardy and the Private Party. So you already know what time it is. These two fresh, young teams are going at it, and it is fast paced. But we actually see Top Flight and Matt Sydal take a lot of the control as they're really quickening the pace. What ends up getting Private Party and Matt Hardy back in the match was when Matt Hardy gets into the face of Private Party, and Private Party just snap and they hit this aggressive streak, really grounding the competition. What ends up getting Matt Sydal and Top Flight back into the match is Top Flight. Top Flight ends up quickening the pace again, but at the end sequence, we actually see a part where Top Flight is going for the finish, but Matt Hardy's distracting the ref for some reason, as Mark Quinn's up top. While we see this, we see Isaiah Cassidy have a steel chair in his hand, and he goes after the member of Top Flight. this is actually a little different because we see Mark Quinn look shocked, but he likes what he sees. As there's a prone Top Flight member on the ground, we see a shooting star press from Mark Quinn for the win. And we see these guys really start to change, and we start to see real heel tendencies come from Private Party, as Matt Hardy has tried to bring it out of them for the past 2 weeks. And now it's looked like it's actually confirmed, as we see Matt Hardy and Private Party go straight and attack Matt Sydal and Top Flight after the match, just butchering them, and Private Party setting up Matt Hardy with 3 Twisted Fates on all 3 members of the competition. So our next match is legit Layla Hirsch versus Penelope Ford, as she is accompanied to by her fiance Kip Sabian, the best man Miro, and their new butler, Mr. Chuck, aka Charles Taylor. Yeah, they done changed this man's name. Ain't that something? So we go straight to the match, where we see great ground game from Layla Hirsch, where she's really relying on her collegiate style, and these two have actually a history going against each other, and we see that really start to come into it, as we don't see really much of a feeling out process. We get straight to the action. What ends up changing the complexion of a match is a surprise pump kit on the outside from Penelope Ford, and we see Layla Hirsch really get taken control of, as Penelope Ford really starts to rely on her athleticism. This is great, but we see Layla Hirsch start to take control again as she goes to her strong strikes and high octane offense. Now, Layla Hirsch ends up going for a risk too many, as she takes out Kip Sabian and Charles on the outside of the ring, as she hits a great dive from the top rope. But we see Penelope Ford capitalize off of this with a big boot, as Layla Hirsch gets back in the ring, and we see Kip Sabian hold down Layla Hirsch's foot for Penelope Ford to pick up the win. Now, after the match, we see Miro force Charles to end up saying to Orange Cassidy, while he's up in the stands, as Orange Cassidy was watching the match, we see Miro force Charles to say that Chuck Taylor is best friends with Miro and not with Orange Cassidy. And of course, as the butler, and as he lost his match last week, he has no choice. He has no leg to stand on. He has to do everything that Miro says, and he does just that, with Orange Cassidy looking really in awe, and he stands up in the crowd and he walks off to go to the back. So that was that, and it's looking like they're really taking advantage of Charles, and I feel bad for Chuck until Trick comes back. Next up, backstage, we see that the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega have attacked Pentagon. So as this is going on, we see Kenny Omega take off his seem-to-be cowboy boot, and he shows it in Pentagon's eye. So, of course, we have repercussions for that. In 2 weeks at Beach Break, we will see Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers versus Jon Moxley, Pac, and Rey Fenix. So, I'm happy for it. I'm ready to see this. The Good Brothers and Kenny Omega got something coming for them. Next up, we have the main event, as we have this triple threat tag team match to determine who is the official tag team of the Inner Circle. We have Pride and Powerful Santana and Ortiz versus MJF and Chris Jericho versus Sammy Hager. Yeah, that's just Sammy Guevara and Jake Hager. That's all it is. And this is a great just showcase of the Inner Circle's talent, as Sammy Guevara and Santana and Ortiz really take over, with Sammy showing how great of a singles wrestler he is, and with Santana and Ortiz really showing how great of a tag team they are. It just sucks that they've been underutilized for the majority of their AEW career. But I'm not mad at it. They're still a great part and a very instrumental force in the Inner Circle. But we end up seeing MJF and Jericho really hang back for the majority of this match. Mainly MJF. MJF really hangs back during this match. But later on during this match, we see Jericho and MJF take control. And then we see Sammy Guevara just go crazy. This man is phenomenal. He goes for the GTH and hits it on Chris Jericho. Then we see Santana get involved, and Sammy Guevara takes out Santana, and then it looks like he has MJF in the GTH. But we see Wardlow get on the apron, and as we see Sammy Guevara use MJF to take out Wardlow off the apron, we see MJF get down and go for a roll up using a fist full of Sammy Guevara's tights to keep him down, and we see MJF and Chris Jericho pick up the win. And now we see MJF and Chris Jericho as the official tag team for the Inner Circle. Well, ladies and gents, that was another episode of AEW Dynamite that I just recapped for you guys. Overall, a very big fan of what AEW is doing going forward. 2 confirmed matches, one for Revolution and one for Beach Break, and a phenomenal tag team match as the tag team division looks extremely stacked to see who's going to become the next challenger for the AEW Tag Championships. So we see plenty of things moving forward for the Young Bucks. And now, all we do is just see what's coming up for the future of 2020 for AEW. But until then, I am Kevin Jones of Disciples of Wrestling. If you guys like this video, definitely hit the thumbs up button. If you guys want to get the word out there and just enjoy our content, definitely hit that subscribe button. If you guys want to keep supporting us, definitely hit that share button over there. And definitely leave comments and let us know what you think of these videos. Until next time, Kevin Jones of Disciples of Wrestling. That was wrestling. Love you guys.